Welcome to a special edition of Whitetail Rendezvous. What's so special? Well, I've asked 6 of my friends who live out here in the Rockies and are DIY archery hunters to share tips, techniques, and resources that they use to be very successful elk and mule deer hunters. One thing you got to remember, April 4th, 2017 is the closing of applications for applying for limited elk. Whitetail Rendezvous and Strike Force Energy have joined together. What have they joined together to do? Well, they joined together to help you kick the can. That's right. Strike Force Energy is the fastest growing new energy drink on Amazon today. It's simple. All you do is rip, drip, and sip. That's it. No sugar, no crash, no calories. It gives you the ability to focus and stay in the stand, stay on the hunt all day long without carrying around a can. When I get a sample pack, simply go to strikeforceenergy.com, put in WR free, and you'll get a 4-count sample pack from Strike Force Energy and mule deer. All the mule deer tags in Colorado are by draw only. Now, there's many areas in Colorado where you can apply for an elk, or you can choose to take an over-the-counter tag. As you might imagine, there's fewer hunters in the limited draw areas, but you still can get a tag, and we have hundreds of thousands of acres of Forest Service land, so you can pick the place you want to hunt. Talking about picking a place, there's no better research tool than GoHunt.com Insider. And I have Brandon Evans as a guest on the show, and he's going to lead off telling you why GoHunt.com is the place to go. Why Insider will give you all the information that you need to know about hunting Colorado. Why? Because I wrote many of the big game unit profiles. What does that mean? You're going to find at GoHunt.com how many preference points it takes. What's the class of trophy that's in there? Is it a 260 bull, a 300 bull, or a 350 bull? As you might imagine, a 350 bull, if it's in a limited draw area, it's going to take a heck of a lot of preference points. It might take years, but they'll still give you the opportunity to use their resource tools to find a place that has 265 bulls, Pope and Young bulls, and you can get an over-the-counter tag. So Brandon Evans from GoHunt.com Insider is going to share how, why, when, and where you can be a successful DIY hunter in the state of Colorado for elk and mule deer. Oh, one thing I want you all to remember, you need to listen to the whole show to get the promo code. What's the promo code going to do? When you sign up to be a member of GoHunt.com Insider, you will be given a Sportsman Warehouse gift card. How much is that gift card? Well, you're going to have to listen to the end of the show to get that. Hey, folks, sit back, relax, and dream about hunting elk and mule deer in the Rockies, specifically in the state of Colorado, coming up this fall. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, and this is another special episode. We are doing a joint project with GoHunt.com, and today I have Henry Ferguson. If you'd followed Henry on social media, you realize he loves hunting mule deer in the mountains, and he's an extraordinary mule deer hunter with a bow. So, Henry, welcome to the show.
That's quite an introduction there, Bruce. Hopefully I can live up to that and not disappoint too many people here.
Let's start right off. And you know, my listeners across North America love to hunt whitetails, and all of them dream to do 2 things in the Rockies. One, hunt elk, and then the second thing is hunt, 30-inch, majestic, muy bueno mule deer. So let's help them out today in the next 20, 30 minutes or so, and help them understand what it really takes to get up close and personal with a trophy mule deer buck.
Sounds great to me. I guess the first place to start, if you're coming out west, I guess the best thing to do, the best advice I could give somebody is get started. Just make a commitment and say, you know what, here we are. I mean, we're recording this about a month ahead of the Colorado draw deadline, which is always going to be that first weekend in April. And if Colorado's on your radar, get on it. Just pick a unit. Any unit in the state's going to have good bucks. So just pick a unit that looks like it fits the terrain that you're kind of aiming for. We've got big bucks out on the eastern plains at 5,000 feet elevation. We've got big bucks at 8,000 feet. We've got big bucks at 13,000, 14,000 feet. So, well, maybe not so many at 14,000, but you can hunt them anywhere from the low grassland all the way up to the high alpine here, and the great thing about Colorado, for example, is, like I said, there's a big buck in every unit. You just got to find them. And the best way to do it is by getting out there and just getting some boots on the ground, practice with it. Pick that unit and try to hunt it twice. That first year, use it as your scouting year, kind of getting to know the area. And if you get back in there and get in there a second and third time, well, you'll just see your success rate start to explode, just start to skyrocket then.
Let's just stop for a second, because the people I've had on earlier about elk hunting said exactly the same thing. So I just want to underscore this. Wherever you're coming from, basically you're flatlanders. In any place in the Rockies, you're going to be a flatlander. So it's going to take you time to learn your terrain. And Henry is 100% correct. There isn't a unit in the state that doesn't have what I would call a shooter buck. Are they all going to be 180s? Maybe not. Is the potential there? Yes, it is, because we both know in suburban areas there's some 180 bucks running around, correct?
Oh, yeah. Honestly, I live on the southwest edge of Denver, and I see bucks that meet that criteria multiple times a year here in our neighborhood. Most of those deer will either die of old age, get eaten by a coyote, or get hit by a car. Unfortunately, that's kind of that's what helps them to live to a ripe old age is the lack of hunting pressure.
And so,
in that particular case,
I guess we can safely say anywhere from the Kansas border to the Utah border, the Wyoming border to the Mexico border, the opportunity is there to shoot a wonderful buck, a buck that you'd be happy to have on your wall. Do you agree to that?
Absolutely. I just came back from the Hunt Expo over in Salt Lake City over the weekend, and I had no less than 20 people ask me where they should be applying in Colorado. And the advice I'm giving is the same that I'm giving to you, and that is, and your listeners, and that is, basically find something that fits the terrain you'd like to hunt. For a lot of people, their image of Colorado is big, wide, expansive basins, wide open basins up above timberline. Well, start looking along the Continental Divide. That's where a lot of the high country is. And, a lot of those, tags can be had for minimal points. So, that's another thing that really is intimidating to a lot of people is the drop process. I mean, as opposed to going to a hardware store or Walmart and picking up a bag, yeah, we do have a set process that you have to go through to get most mule deer tags out west. I mean, there's states like Idaho and Arizona and a couple others that do have over-the-counter hunts, but for the most part, you're going to need to draw a tag. But again, just get on there, do that research, get with it. It's worth it. It's absolutely worth it.
So let's go back to the beginning. I kind of jumped ahead, but I wanted to underscore, about the potential out west, whatever state you have, you choose. One, as Henry said, choose your elevation, and that'll determine the terrain. And then the second, you got to learn. You really have to invest, I would say, at least 2 years. You might get lucky the first year. Yeah. Second year, you might get a little smarter. And the third year, you should be really able to close the deal. So going back, let's talk about, Bob sitting in Oshkosh, Wisconsin going, I want a mule deer hunt. And the draw's coming up and he's going to pay his money and get in the draw here in Colorado. So what should he be thinking? Once he puts his money down, he's committed, if he draws the tag. And so what does Bob need to start doing?
Well, right now, like we said, Bob needs to figure out what elevation he wants to hunt at. So if he wants to hunt, in that an Eastern Plains hunt, some of the things he's going to have to look at is he's probably going to have to hire a guide. If you're going to hunt out, on that eastern side of the state, it's almost all private. And you're not just going to go up and knock on somebody's door. This could happen, but it's kind of a fairy tale anymore of going up and knocking on somebody's door out in eastern Colorado who's got a big river bottom and saying, "Hey, you ever let anybody hunt your property?" The chances are they do let somebody hunt it, and chances are it's an outfitter that's paying them a bunch of money to lease up that land. So, you can kind of look at that, and if that's the course you want to go, then there's some excellent outfitters out there, and they kill some big bucks every year. Myself, I want a public land hunt. That's something that's a lot more appealing to me, to be able to hunt a deer that literally anybody who draws a tag for that unit has equal opportunity at that buck. And that's what I'm looking for. And I think that's probably what most of your listeners are looking for. You can find these bucks at any elevation. I mean, if you want to hunt them in the pine trees and aspen trees, look at some of those kind of mid-mountain areas, where 8 to 10,000 feet. If you want to hunt them up in the high country, those units that are 10,000 feet above. If you're looking on Google Earth or on Go Hunt or places like that, those are going to be easy spots to find because you're not going to see any green. Or if you do see green, it's not going to be trees. So that's what you're looking for. So just pick that unit and commit to it, because the really interesting thing, and you touched on this just a minute ago, Bruce, was it's that second and third year. Yeah, sure, you might get lucky getting one out there on that first hunt, but chances are it's going to be that second or third year that you really kind of figure it out. And that's why I always look at low point units. I mean, I'm not a guy who's sitting on 10 points in any state. That's just not me. I like to hunt too much.
And thanks for that. I think we get notified sometime in June that we've been successful in the drawers. Is that right?
In Colorado, it's usually the last week of May, first week of June that we'll find out exactly what we drew. And that's for deer and elk. Those will come out usually in back-to-back weeks, and it kind of varies. They'll kind of play around with that a little bit from year to year, but by and large, by Memorial Day, you know where you're going to be hunting. And that brings up a great suggestion that I have here, and this is get out there and get your boots on the ground at least one time before the hunt. Google Earth's awesome. You can get kind of that bird's eye view of it, but you really kind of struggle to pick out those saddles and those little transition areas and that, kind of the travel patterns. And if you can bring your family out, we're kind of talking about Colorado right now, Bruce. So if you bring your family out, say mid to late July, and bring them out here for a nice fishing trip / camping trip, man, everybody's going to have a great time. If you don't have fun in Colorado, that's a you problem, not a Colorado problem.
Yeah.
It's beautiful here. Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful place. This is, hey, we all saw those Coors commercials as kids, and man, Pete Coors made this look like the most beautiful place on earth. And I'll tell you, I've lived here for 20 plus years, and he's not wrong.
No.
So bring the family out here, get out early in the mornings, get a couple of hikes in here and there. And that's going to give you a leg up on the competition when it comes to having stout it. So you can see kind of where those animals are. And that, depending on what season you hunt, they may not be in that exact spot, but it'll at least give you an idea of what to expect.
Henry, let's talk about, so Bob from Oshkosh jumps in the truck and they say, we're going to go to Unit 44. Would be hard to draw a tag, but I'm just trying to think some of the low priority. It doesn't matter, but what I'm thinking, I want to find transition zones. So help explain that. And do you agree or disagree with transition zone hunting?
Well, and again, that really depends which season you're hunting, because if you're on an early season archery hunt, which is where I focus, transition zones aren't necessarily as big. You can get into some travel corridors and stuff, but really what you want to look for, if you're talking transition zones between like feed and bedding, then yeah, absolutely, that's vital. You need to at least have some idea of where they start their morning, because I always start my morning off at the highest point around with my binoculars and spotting scope scope up against my eyes, trying to find that buck I'm looking for. And, I do have a bit of a home court advantage in that I live here. So I've usually, usually before the season, I'll have my hit list, and it's, I'll have my top 10 bucks, and I babysit these bad boys. I mean, I watch them as often as I possibly can, and just make sure that I'm prepared for when that opportunity does arise. But if you're watching where they feed in the mornings, and then you have some idea of where they bed, there's a couple of guys who are real successful in just positioning themselves in between those two spots and waiting for them to kind of pass by and get that shot as they're moving between the bedding, feeding and bedding areas. Myself, I tend to let them bed down for the day, make sure they're bedded down, and start the stock at that point.
And for the show, and Henry, we're talking DIY archery hunters. Now, gun hunting is a completely different game as far as I'm concerned, just because of the hunting pressure. But we're talking DIY. So let's talk. I personally know where there's a few bucks and they're above 10,000 feet, but they're hard to hunt for a lot of different reasons. But let's just start at tree line. What's that run? 10, 5, 11, and let's work down all the way to the plains and just give snippets of how you would hunt each one of them. Just give a couple of minutes because we'll run out of time on the show. But just start at tree line and let's get all the way down to the river bottoms on the Arkansas out in eastern Colorado.
Okay, so starting at tree line is most people's image of Colorado. It's just beautiful up there, and it's breathtaking. And the great thing about tree line is it really plays into one of my strengths as a hunter, and that's glassing. I'm patient behind the glass, just like a whitetail hunter is patient in the stand. A successful whitetail hunter is patient in the stand. The same can be said for a mule deer hunter that's going to be consistently successful. They are going to be spending a lot of time behind the glass, making sure, watching these deer. So you want to find a spot. You want to find a good vantage point. And some of these can be found on Google Earth, but keep in mind, if you see it on Google Earth, chances are somebody else is looking at the same spot, and they put their own pin in that spot, and so you may have some competition there. I always go into a new area having already picked out 3 or 4 spots that I can glass from, and truthfully, it's not been a big issue for me. I've not really had any uncomfortable confrontations. We did had a couple of guys who literally camped out on our spot, on one of our preferred glassing spots this year, but that's a different story for a different time. But find that spot, watch the deer, watch where they're feeding, watch where they're watering. One thing that you'll notice about mule deer is you won't see them go to water all that often. A lot of times they get the moisture they need from the plants, or at times you'll see them kind of stop and stick their head in a creek for just a little bit, but for the most part they get the most of the moisture they need from plants. So you're going to watch them in that morning feed pattern. Wait for them to bed down. Wait for those thermals to shift, because man, if you don't, you're just going for a nice hike. You're taking your bow for a nice hike through the woods. And my bow's gone on lots of hikes, lots of nature hikes. It's seen a lot of very pretty places, and we've come to the understanding that it really prefers to shoot at animals. So, by learning a few things and being a little bit patient, once you found it, waiting for mid-morning for those thermals to shift. So those, as everybody knows, heat rises, and that's basically what you're waiting for. You're waiting for that heat to rise and start bringing that warmer air up the hill, and so the wind starts blowing uphill, and that's what you want to wait for. You want to wait for that. Try to position yourself above them, and know that if they do smell you, it's over. They're not going to stick around and wait to see what it was. So that's your typical morning hunt there in a high country setting. And a lot of times, once you start working down lower in elevation, you start getting into thicker trees. I always try to focus on aspens. Aspens just have, for some reason, and I'm not a biologist, I can't really explain why it is or what it is, but for some reason, aspens seem to have all of the things that deer and elk like to eat growing and, right there at the base of them. So I would focus on aspen growth and, in the mornings, kind of watch the edges of those. And a lot of times during the day, they do tend to bed in those aspens if they're not too terribly thick, because, in those early season hunts, not early morning, with those racks still in velvet, they don't want to go into really thick cover. And that can make them a little bit easier to find and a little bit easier to bed down, because they're not going to head into that stuff that's, as thick as the hair on a dog's back, and you can't get a shot through it in your best day anyway. So watch, in kind of that mid-mountain settings, those 8 to 10,000 foot settings, we're watching for that. We're watching for any opening, whether it's a logging cut or a burn or anything like that. Finding that open terrain, again, just really leads into my skill set, which I mentioned is glassing. You just need to have that open terrain. And then out on the Eastern Plains, man, I'm not a great guy to talk to you about that, because the only time I really spend out there is hunting antelope. And so I've gotten to watch a few deer here and there out there, but that's going to be primarily still a spot and stock game, but you're going to want to watch washes, which are just like dry creek beds, draws and canyons. Those are the kind of things. You're just looking, like anywhere else, you're looking for terrain. You're looking for things that can provide shade for those deer so they can bed up midday. And that's kind of hunting in a nutshell there for mule.
Whitetail Rendezvous is pleased to announce a partnership with GoHunt.com. Who's GoHunt.com? Well, if you're a DIY hunter, you need the information at GoHunt.com/insider. Why? Because it provides 4,200 profiles, every unit, every species, and every season. Furthermore, they give in-depth analysis, interactive maps, unit access, and seasonal trends. Draws are very important, and they give you the most accurate information in the business. All this is available when you go to GoHunt.com/insider. Make sure you use promo code WR when you join Insider. You'll get a $50 gift card for GoHunt.com Gear Shop. All in all, if you're hunting out west in 2018, GoHunt.com Insider is where you need to be to get all the research information. When you use promo code WR, Whitetail Rendezvous receives a small commission from GoHunt.com.
They're out here.
So below the aspen, we got ponderosa pine, and then we drop down into the oak brush and sage. Do you hunt any of those areas?
Oh, heck yeah. I love hunting oak brush. That's a lot of fun. And, oak brush in Colorado can be found at a lot of different elevations. It's kind of interesting like that. And then you go over to Utah, and you'll see oak brush up way high on the mountain, and but that gives the deer a great spot to bed if it's thick. It can be, it varies a lot. And patchy oak brush is one of my favorite things in the world to hunt, simply because if there's a little patchy oak brush out there, they will go out of their way to bed in those patches. And when you get into them, you're going to find there's always a little network of trails going through these patches of oak brush, no matter how big. If it's a small patch or a big one, there's always trails going through there. Now, getting through there quietly requires a ton of patience and a little bit of planning. But I've killed some good deer out of oak brush, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy hunting. And they feel. I find that deer in oak brush or thick aspens, places that are real thick, they get this false sense of security. And I've had some just insanely close range encounters with big deer that literally they'll just bed up, and they may hear you a little bit, but they're used to hearing stuff move through the oak brush. Everything that moves through the oak brush makes noise. So, make as little as you can, and, make sure that nothing is scraping on aluminum or carbon arrows, I mean, because that's an unnatural noise. And they have an uncanny ability to, really weed out those unnatural noises. So just kind of keep it as quiet as you can, keep the wind in your face, and you can have some really fun encounters in Oak Brush, because I've had deer blow out. I watched a deer blow out from my buddy Mike on a stalk this year, and we didn't count that in yards away. We counted that encounter in feet, and that was pretty cool to watch. So I watched that whole thing go down from the tree spotting scope.
Let's talk about the stalk. And the reason I want to bring this up, you're going to be glassing from, like Henry said, from an observation point, long distance glassing. You're going to see a deer. You're going to let him bed. Now what happens? Take me through, what happens when he's down for the day, and he might not be by himself, but he's really not going to move any time soon. So walk us through the stalk.
So there's been a lot of talk lately from a lot of mule deer experts about secondary beds. So you'll have kind of a morning bed and then a second bed. And that second bed, and a lot of this depends on, in my experience, these things depend on two things. Number one is stability of the wind, and number two is cover. So if they can stay in shade for a decent amount of the day, a decent part of the day, then they tend to stay bedded a bit longer. If that wind stays blowing in their face out of a consistent direction, they'll tend to stay a little bit longer, bedded a little longer, that is. But if you're in a place that has a lot of swirling winds and, maybe the cover is really sparse. So let's take, for example, one of those lowland hunts. Let's go to Oak Brush or maybe a creek bottom, where they're bedded up in a dry creek bed. Well, that's only going to give them shade for a few hours at a time. So they'll rebed a lot during that, in the lower elevation. And it's simply based on shade. I mean, as soon as that sun starts shining on them, hey, they're wearing a fur coat, it's inevitable. They're going to warm up and they'll need to move. Once you start seeing, if you're close enough that you can see that deer really chewing its cud, if it's kind of regurgitating and chewing its cud, well, now it's game on. He's probably not going anywhere anytime soon. But, one of the important things to also mention there, Bruce, is when you get started in the morning, you're not just looking 100 yards away. You're not looking necessarily within a couple 100 yards. Some of these vistas, that we find for glassing points, you could be looking a mile, 2 miles away. So, it depends on the distance you are from them, what your plan is for a stalk. But, I go as fast as I can when they're not looking, or they can't see me. If I can get a ridge or a hill or a wash in between us, man, I'll move as fast as I can to cover most of the distance. But once you get up close, it's time to stop taking chances. It's time to really slow down and stop taking risks, because if they see you, they're gone. If they hear you, they're probably gone. If they smell you, they're definitely gone. So make sure if I look at a deer where it's bedded and based on wind direction, available cover and whatnot, if I don't think there's, truthfully, if I don't have better than a 70% chance of closing the distance on it, I'm going to back out and I'll just wait for it to find a second bed or come back another day for that buck, because it's just not, in my opinion, it's just not worth risking it. It's not worth blowing them out of there.
So let's take a typical stalk. We're a mile away. We watch the buck bed in whatever terrain he's in, and then what's the duration time? I know we got ridges and stuff between them.
Oh man!
But once we break it down to within 440 yards, a quarter mile from the deer, what happens then?
Well, see, with a rifle hunt, with the modern rifle, your hunt's over. You're just waiting for them to stand up at that point. Now, with a bow, your hunt hasn't even really started yet. I look at it on an archery hunt. I look at my hunt as really starting at 200 yards. So, once I close the distance to about 200 yards, at that point, my boots are coming off. I'm going to take my boots off because those ears that they have, man, they can hear everything. I mean, everything. So I've blown a lot of stocks by, just breaking a branch, stepping on a branch or rolling a rock, and it makes a noise that just catches their attention. They look up and see it. But I take my boots off, and I always carry an extra pair of thick hunting socks with me. So, this last year I went to Costco and bought like a 10-pack of thick athletic socks in a black color. So they're not white, they're not showing up real well. But basically, what I do, like I said, at about 200 yards, and depending on the terrain, if it's super still, I might do this at 300 or 400 yards. But I'll get out, I'll sit down, I'll tie my boots. I tie my two boots together and I hang them from the most visible place I possibly can, which is a lesson that you only learn the hard way. When you're going back looking for your boots that you hung in a really totally easily visible spot, but you still can't find them. And I've walked around for miles looking for boots, and that's not all that much fun. So what I try to do now, I try to leave, if I've got a GPS with me, and I always do, I'll just mark a waypoint for my boots. So I know I can get back there and find my stinking boots. But take those boots off. I've already got a pair of thick, synthetic or wool hunting socks on. And then I'll slide this extra pair of socks over it. And then one important step that a lot of people miss, I will take my pant leg and I will tuck it into that top layer of socks, that top pair of socks. And the reason you want to do that, and the reason that's important, is because when you're down, now you've taken the height of your boot out, so your pant leg is virtually scraping the ground, and it's going to scrape and make more noise than you can even imagine. So just tuck it in there, tuck it in your pant or in your socks, so it's going to make a lot less noise on the stock. So once you get started on that stock, that final 200 yards, now it's time to really slow down. And so having socks on has two benefits. Number one, you can feel, if you're stepping on a stick, you can feel it. And you can lift that foot back up and go, put it down somewhere else. Because if you step on that stick and it breaks, the sock is going to muffle some of that sound. The double layer sock will muffle some of the sound, but not all of it. So it has two benefits. Like I said, it's going to muffle the sound a little bit, and also it's going to force you to slow down. Because trust me, walking around in any of these terrains, whether it's high country, low elevation, lower elevations, 8,000 feet and lower here in Colorado, you're going to have cactuses. Not a ton in all spots, but out east, man, there's a lot. So you don't, the socks aren't really a terrific idea there, but yeah, just slow it down, making sure that buck can't see you, making sure he can't hear you, making sure he can't smell you. Those are just the vital things. So, and one of the things that I'm constantly doing is ranging. So as I'm getting close, if I'm within a couple hundred yards, I'll know where that deer is. So I'll start ranging. Okay, I'm at about 200 yards right now. A little while later in the stock, I'll range again. Okay, I'm at about 130. And each of these times is kind of a call to action to adjust my technique. The closer I'm getting, the slower I need to be going, and the more cautious I need to be, because everything's just amplified. So, and then once you get in close, man, this is where a lot of hunters fall short. When they get in close, they want it to happen. They're ready to shoot. And that's just not the way it always works. I've sat on deer for an hour. I've sat on them for 10 minutes. I've sat on them for multiple hours waiting for them to stand up. And there's not many things more frustrating than doing everything right, closing the distance, getting right there. You're 40 yards away. You're set up waiting for them to go. And they just get up and feet away from you. Never offer a shot. And, sometimes you've been waiting for hours for that opportunity to materialize. And you just had to chalk it up to a learning experience and head back up to your vantage point and look for the next one. So that's kind of my basic stock.
When you knock your arrow,
When I'm within my effective range, and so I mean, for myself personally, once I get to 100 yards, I want to start getting things ready. So if he jumps up and things are, or if he just stands up naturally and starts to feed, I mean, man, if I'm at 80 yards and it's totally calm and he's just sitting there feeding relaxed, I'm going to take that shot. I mean, that's, I want to be prepared to get that shot opportunity. And also, all these things require movement. They make noise. So I want to be, once I'm within my effective range, I've got an arrow knocked. I'm ready to kill that deer when it stands up.
Thanks for that. And we're at the time in the show that you get an opportunity to let people know how to reach out to you on social media and then get some shout outs. And it's amazing, but the time just flies by. I'm sitting here listening, scribbling notes and going, geez. And you had me right there. I've fortunately been done it a couple of times. You've done it hundreds of times, but you flash back into some situations, and you're stalking that buck, and folks, it's a thrill. So having said that, Henry, could you share how to get a hold of you on social media and then give some shout outs, and we got to wrap the show?
You bet. So first of all, I mean, I'm, like most people, about maxed out on my Facebook friends, but I'm on there as Henry Ferguson, and on pretty much anything I put on Facebook is also on Instagram. And the beauty of Instagram is you can have as many friends and followers as you want. And I'm on there as Big Chief Wackabuck. It's my Native American name, since I am, like the rest of the country, 1/16 Cherokee, and so that's probably the best way to reach out to me. If you have any questions on there, please don't hesitate to message me. I'm always happy to help anybody out with that. My friend Tim Lang and I are going to be starting a YouTube channel here pretty quick called Not Fit to Hunt, and it's going to be pretty entertaining. What we're trying to do is create a more understanding environment for hunters, because a lot of people have this mistaken image that coming out west to hunt, you've got to look like you're chiseled out of granite, and be spending about 80 hours a week in the gym. And well, let me just say that does not describe me at all. And the fact is, a good hunter is going to be able to overcome a lot of things. Now, I will say this: the altitude out here is no joke. You want to make sure you're prepared for that, and get your cardiovascular system in as good a shape as you possibly can, and you're going to have a lot of fun out here. But I've had a lot of success with, using Badlands backpack, gold tip arrows, Grim Reaper broadheads. These are all products that have really served me very well over the years. And, you don't have to spend a fortune to get good quality gear. And that's, just be smart about it, make good investments. And like I said, more than anything, if you're thinking about doing it, just get out here and do it. Just go do it. You're going to have more fun than you can imagine. Bruce, you just mentioned the adrenaline rush of stalking a deer. Holy cow. I sat on a buck this year for an hour and a half waiting for him to stand up at a range where I literally could have spit on him. My heart, for an hour and a half that I waited on that buck, it just never stopped. I mean, it was just racing. And it's such a thrill. And until you've experienced it, I just can't. It's not something you can describe. Get out here, do it. Just get out here and have some fun. Shoot a small deer that first year. Just get the experience. And I'm telling you, it's a lot of fun. And once you do it once, chances are it's going to become an annual event, and you're going to have to explain that to your wife that you need to carve out a few extra bucks every year to make your pilgrimage west, because it's a lot of fun.
Henry Ferguson, thank you so much for sharing with my listeners across North America about the ins and outs of mule deer hunting, DIY, public land, with a bow. And I just, I've got a whole page of notes, and I'm going, oh man. And hopefully I do draw a tag, because, I got a couple of honey holes that we're going to glass.
Oh, we've been talking about that. I'd love to get up there.
It's going to be 3 miles. We're glassing from 3 3 miles because I'm not going to climb to where they are. And we'll get our phone scopes, and we're going to have some fun for sure.
That's one of the great things about glassing is it helps take the huge vastness of the terrain out here and carve it down into manageable slices. And that's really what you're trying to do, because not every bit of terrain holds animals. You know, you just need to carve them out and find the pockets and then go have some fun.
Yeah. So, Henry, again, it's just been a joy having you share with people. And folks, there's a lot of guys out there who know how to hunt mule deer. And Henry, he's my secret weapon. I can tell you that. So, Henry, again, thank you so much, sir.
Hey, thanks again.
Hey, folks. Bruce Hutchin, host of Whitetail Rendezvous. Hey, I'm pleased to announce that Buckwild Coffee is continuing their sponsorship for 2019. What's so special about Buckwild Coffee? Well, a gazillion people every day go to Starbucks and buy coffee. Well, I'll ship it to your house. Yes, I'll ship light, medium, or dark roast, ground, or bean, right to your house. It's real simple. Just go to whitetailrendezvous.com/shop, pick out what roast you want, and we'll ship it out. Take a look at Buckwild Coffee, the finest roast in the West. Well, finest roast around the campfire, finest roast around your kitchen table. It's just flat out the finest roast you can get today. Order some at whitetailrendezvous.com/shop.
Take care.
As promised, here's the good stuff. When you sign up for your membership at GoHunt.com Insider, you're going to get a promo code WR2017. Again, that promo code is WR2017. What's that going to do? Well, that's going to enable you, when you pay for your membership, to get a $50, yes, $50 Sportsman Warehouse gift card. So here's the deal. You go to www.gohunt.com/insider and fill out all the information. When it asks for promo code, put in WR2017. And when you get verification of your membership in the mail, you will get from GoHunt.com a $50 Sportsman Warehouse gift card. Couldn't be any simpler. And I want to thank each and every one of you for listening to Whitetail Rendezvous DIY in the Rockies Special Edition.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.